Round 6. The Fire and the Wind. Chapter 1. The Defector. Brunhilde's Box. Before the match. You're joking. Gaul stared at her sister, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. Brunhilde. Sister, you cannot be serious. I'm completely serious. A Titan. You selected a Titan to fight for humanity. Brunhilde's silver eyes remained fixed on the arena below, where preparations were underway for round 6. The score stood at an impossible equilibrium, 3 victories each, after whatever had happened in round 5. No one could quite remember. The official records showed undefined. The Valkyries' tactical scrolls were blank. Even Heimdall's memory seemed to skip when he tried to recall the details. I didn't select him, Brunhilde said quietly. He selected us. Flashback. The approach. 3 days before round 6, where the architecture of the arena gave way to the formless void between realms. Brunhilde stood alone, reviewing her remaining champions, calculating odds that grew worse with each match. She sensed him before she saw him. Heat, not warmth, heat, the kind that precedes fire, the kind that makes the air itself flinch. Valkyrie. She turned. He was vast, not physically, though his form was imposing enough. Vast in presence, in weight, in the accumulated density of suffering that hung around him like a cloak made of screams. Prometheus. The chains were gone, had been gone since Heracles freed him, eons ago. But the marks remained. His wrists bore the memory of divine shackles. His side bore the scar where the eagle had fed, day after day, for 30,000 years. You shouldn't be here, Brunhilde said, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. This space is... I know what this space is. His voice was like a forge, the deep rumble of coals that have burned for centuries. I know what you're doing. I know the stakes. Then you know I can't. I want to fight. Brunhilde stopped. What? For humanity. He stepped closer, and she felt the heat intensify. Not aggressive, but unavoidable. Like standing near truth itself. I want to fight for humanity. You're a Titan. Technically, you're on their side, the divine side. You can't just... I gave them fire. The words landed like stones in still water. I gave them fire. And do you know what the gods did? They chained me to a rock. They sent an eagle to eat my liver every day for 30,000 years, every single day. His eyes, ancient, golden, carrying the memory of light before the sun, met hers. Not one of them visited. Not Zeus, who ordered the punishment. Not Athena, who claims to love wisdom. Not Hermes, who moves between all worlds. 30,000 years, and not one god said, perhaps this was too much. Perhaps he was right to love them. But humans, his voice softened. The forge heat became something else, something that could warm rather than burn. Humans remembered. They told stories about me. They named the fire after me. They built temples, not grand ones, not like the Olympians demand, but small ones, personal ones. A hearth is a temple to Prometheus, whether they know it or not. Every time they gathered around a fire to cook, to warm themselves, to tell stories in the dark, they were praying to me, without even knowing. He looked toward the arena, invisible from here, but present in its weight on reality. The gods punished me for loving humanity. Humanity rewarded me by using what I gave them, by making more than I ever imagined from a simple flame. They made forges. They made light in darkness. They made, his voice caught, they made each other warm when the world was cold. I want to fight for them. I want to stand in that arena and show every god who watched me suffer that I would do it again, that I would do it forever, that my love for humanity is greater than their love for order, for hierarchy, for their precious cosmic balance. Brunhilde was silent for a long moment. There's a problem, she said finally. What? The Volander. The divine weapons we create, they're forged from the souls of Valkyries. They bind with human champions. I don't know if they can bond with a Titan. The process might. I don't need a Volander. He raised his hands. The scars on his wrists began to glow, not with fire, but with something deeper. The memory of chains transforming into something else. 30,000 years of punishment gave me something the gods never intended. They meant to break me. Instead, they forged me. My pain became my weapon. My endurance became my technique. My love became my fire. But the rules say a champion needs a divine weapon to harm a god. I am a divine weapon now. I was made into one. By them, by their own punishment. He smiled, and it was terrible and beautiful, like watching a sunrise over a battlefield. Let them face what they created. The present, Brunhilde's realization. He's not wrong, Brunhilde murmured, more to herself than to Gull. 30,000 years of divine punishment. It changed him, refined him. He's not just a Titan anymore. He's something else. But he still needs a Volander, Gull insisted. The rules are clear. A champion must have a divine weapon bonded through the soul of a Valkyrie. Yes. Brunhilde's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Which is why I've made arrangements. Arrangements? With who? None of us have volunteered to Claire. Not one of us. Gull's confusion deepened. Then who? Brunhilde pointed toward the eastern gate, where a shape was emerging from the shadows. Not Prometheus. Something else. Something with wings. The eastern gate. The arrival. The eagle was enormous. Not metaphorically. Literally enormous. Wingspan wider than the gate itself. Feathers that shimmered between bronze and gold. Eyes that held 30,000 years of a very particular kind of memory. The crowd fell silent, because everyone recognized this eagle, every human who knew the old stories. This was the eagle, the one Zeus had sent, the one that had eaten Prometheus's liver every single day for 300 centuries. Aetos Caucasios, the Caucasian eagle. And it was walking toward the arena not as a divine instrument of punishment, but as a Valkyrie. A Brunhilde explanation. How? Gull's voice was barely a whisper. Aetos came to me, Brunhilde said, the same night Prometheus did. Neither knew the other had approached me. But the eagle tortured him for 30,000 years. Yes, and do you know what Aetos told me? Gull shook her head. Aetos said, I was created for one purpose, to cause pain, to be the instrument of a punishment I never chose and never understood. For 30,000 years I did what I was made to do. And every single day, he looked at me, not with hatred, not with rage, with pity. He pitied me, the one tearing out his organs. He understood that I was as much a prisoner as he was. Brunhilde's voice softened. When Heracles freed him, I expected to feel relief. I felt lost. My purpose was gone. What was I without the punishment to deliver? What was I for? And now? Now Atos has chosen a new purpose, to become the weapon of the one it once wounded, to transform 30,000 years of inflicting pain into, she paused, searching for the right word, into armor, into the Volander that will let Prometheus face the gods as a champion of humanity. The torturer becoming the protector, Goal breathed, the wound becoming the shield. In the arena below, Atos landed beside Prometheus. For a long moment, Titan and Eagle simply looked at each other. Then Prometheus extended his arm. Atos stepped onto it, and the transformation began. The Volander formation. It wasn't like other Volander formations. When a Valkyrie bonded with a human champion, there was a flash of light, a moment of connection, and then the weapon appeared. Sword, spear, armor, whatever form suited the fighter. Atos didn't flash. Atos unfurled. The great wings spread wide, then wider, then impossibly wide. Not growing, but becoming. Feathers that had once torn flesh now flattened, merged, transformed. The bronze-gold coloring deepened, darkened, became something between metal and fire. The eagle wrapped itself around Prometheus like a cloak. No, like a second skin. Wings becoming a mantle that covered his shoulders and back. Talons becoming gauntlets that encased his scarred wrists. The eagle's head settling over Prometheus's heart like a breastplate, its eyes still open, still watching, still present. And in Prometheus's hand, a blade, not forged, feathered, each edge composed of countless bronze-gold pinions, each one carrying the memory of 30,000 wounds delivered. The sword didn't gleam, it smoldered. Heat rising from it in waves that made the air itself weep. So called, the Volander is complete. Heimdall announced, his voice carrying across the stunned arena. The bond of Atos Caucasius, the eagle's wound. Prometheus raised the blade. The crowd could see now that the weapon wasn't just metal and feather, it was scar tissue. Every cut the eagle had made, every day of liver consumed and regenerated, all of it crystallized into a single edge. For 30,000 years, Prometheus said, his voice carrying without effort. This eagle tore me apart. Now we tear apart the ones who sent it. The Western Gate, the opponent. And representing the gods, Heimdall paused. Even he seemed uncertain how to announce what was emerging from the Western Gate. Not because it was terrifying, because it was nothing. A breeze, a gentle stirring of air, the kind of wind that carries the scent of spring flowers, that dries the sweat on a laborer's brow, that makes curtains dance in afternoon light. Zephyrus, god of the west wind. The crowd's confusion was palpable. Against Prometheus, the Titan who had survived 30,000 years of torture, who now wore his own torturer as divine armor, who carried a blade forged from millennia of suffering, the gods had sent a breeze. Zephyrus, first appearance. He materialized slowly, like morning mist deciding to have a conversation. Beautiful, in the careless way that wind is beautiful. Not trying to be anything, just being. His form kept shifting at the edges, hair and clothes and skin, all slightly translucent, all slightly moving, as if he was less a person than a suggestion of a person made by air currents that liked the idea of having a face. He was smiling, not confidently, not arrogantly, just smiling. The way you smile when you see an old friend. The way you smile when the weather is nice and you have nowhere to be. "Hi," Zephyrus said. His voice was exactly what you'd expect from wind, given vocal cords. Light, directionless, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Prometheus stared at him. "This is my opponent?" Apparently, Zephyrus did a little spin, leaving tiny whirlwinds in his wake. "I was as surprised as you. I was just doing my thing, carrying seeds, drying laundry, making sailing pleasant. And suddenly Zeus shows up and says, 'You're fighting the Titan.' And you agreed? Did I have a choice?" The smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind it. When the King of Gods asks you to do something, you do it. Or you end up, he glanced at Prometheus's scarred wrists. Well, you know. The divine section's confusion. "Is this a joke?" Ares demanded. "We're sending the gentlest wind against a titan forged in 30,000 years of agony?" "Zeus's orders," Athena replied, but even she seemed uncertain. He was specific. It had to be Zephyrus. But why? I don't know. The goddess of wisdom not knowing something. The words sat uncomfortably in her mouth. Zephyrus has never been a warrior. He's barely been a presence. He delivers spring. He helps flowers bloom. He's the reason the west coast of Greece has pleasant weather. So we're going to lose round 6 because our king has a sense of humor? Perhaps. Athena's eyes narrowed, watching the mismatched pair below.
Or perhaps Zeus knows something we don't. The arena, the face-off. Prometheus and Zephyrus stood 30 feet apart. Fire and wind, suffering and ease. The weight of 30,000 years against the lightness of a spring afternoon. "I want you to know," Prometheus said, his voice low and serious, "that I take no pleasure in this. You're not my enemy. The gods who sent you are my enemies. You're just a pawn." Zephyrus shrugged, and the shrug created a small dust devil.
Sure, that's what I've always been. The wind no one notices. The breath no one thanks. The gentle presence that makes hard things slightly easier. Then why are you here? Because I was asked. Simple, undefended. And because, I don't know, maybe I'm curious. Curious about what? Zephyrus's smile shifted, just slightly. Something deeper flickering through the eternal pleasantness. About whether there's more to me than I think. About whether the wind that dries tears can also. He didn't finish the sentence. Round 6, Heimdall's voice boomed. Prometheus versus Zephyrus, begin. The first strike. Prometheus moved, not quickly, inevitably. The way fire moves, the way heat finds cold, the way something that has waited 30,000 years for justice stops waiting. The eagle's wound rose in a perfect arc, and Prometheus demonstrated the first principle of his art, the strike that appears from nothing. There was no wind-up, no preparation, no telegraph of any kind. One moment the blade was at rest, the next it was everywhere, occupying every point in space between Prometheus and Zephyrus simultaneously, then collapsing back into a single lethal edge that screamed toward the wind god's neck. The crowd gasped. Zephyrus didn't dodge, didn't block, didn't move at all. The blade passed through where his throat should have been and found nothing. Just air, just wind, just the faint scent of spring flowers. Zephyrus was standing 3 feet to the left, exactly where he'd been standing before, as if he'd never been anywhere else. "Huh?" he said. "What?" Prometheus spun, blade ready. "No, I just—" Zephyrus tilted his head. "What did the fish say when it hit the wall?" "What?" "Damn." Silence. The crowd stared. Prometheus stared. Even Heimdall stared. Did you just... Prometheus's confusion was absolute. Did you just tell me a joke? In the middle of combat? Was it not a good time? Zephyrus seemed genuinely uncertain. I thought, when the moment is tense, you lighten it. That's what I do. I'm the west wind. I ease things. This isn't something to be eased. This is Ragnarok. This is the survival of humanity. This is heavy, Zephyrus agreed. Very heavy. So heavy. He did another little spin. Do you know what else is heavy? An elephant standing on your chest. What? Nothing. Just, that's heavy. Very comparable weights. Prometheus's grip on his blade tightened. You're mocking me. Am I? The wind god's smile flickered. Or am I just being what I am? You're fire. You burn. You transform. You can't help it. And I'm wind. I blow. I carry. I ease. I can't help it either. You can't help making jokes while I'm trying to kill you. Can I? Genuine question. Have you ever tried to stop a wind from blowing? It's not really possible. We just do what we do. Prometheus stared at him for a long moment, then raised his blade again. Fine. Let's see if you can joke your way through this. The second strike. The strike that lands dead center without aim. Prometheus didn't aim. That was the point. The blade moved, not toward Zephyrus, not toward any target at all. It simply moved. A gesture, a statement, an expression of violence so pure it needed no direction. And yet, it found its mark. The eagle's wound sliced through the air, through the space where Zephyrus wasn't standing and had never intended to stand, through the concept of where itself, and opened a gash across the wind god's cheek. Golden ichor welled up, the blood of gods. Zephyrus blinked, touched his face, looked at the divine blood on his fingers. Oh, he said, that actually hurt. That was the intention. Right. No, I get it. Combat, pain, consequences. Zephyrus nodded, still looking at the blood on his hand. It's just, I've never really bled before. I mean, I knew I could, theoretically, but wind doesn't usually encounter things that can cut it. Get used to it. Probably should, yeah. He wiped the ichor on his robes, which immediately began to dry in a self-generated breeze. Hey, speaking of getting used to things, how long did it take you to get used to the eagle, the eating your liver thing? Prometheus went very still. I'm just curious. Like, the first day must have been wow, right? Absolutely wow. But by year 10,000, year 20,000, did it still hurt the same? Or did you develop a kind of relationship with it? You're asking me about the 30,000 years of torture? I'm asking if you miss it. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the crowd, even the gods, even the wind that Zephyrus embodied, all of it went still. Do I miss it? Prometheus's voice was barely a whisper. Do I miss having my organs torn out every day? Do I miss the endless cycle of agony and regeneration? Do I miss not the pain? Zephyrus's voice had changed, softer now, less flippant. The certainty, the purpose. Every day you knew exactly what was going to happen. Every day you knew exactly who you were. The one who suffers, the one who endures, the one who loves humanity so much that he accepted eternal torture rather than regret the gift he gave. But now you're free. The chains are gone. The eagle is your armor instead of your torturer. And you're in an arena, fighting for the humanity you love, just like you always wanted. Another step. So why do you look so lost? The strike that doesn't land. Prometheus attacked. Not the refined, principled attack he'd been demonstrating. Just attacked. Wild, furious, the blade swinging in brutal arcs that tore the air itself. Zephyrus flowed around each strike like wind, like something that had never learned how to be solid enough to be hit. 3 monks walk into a bar, he said, ducking under a horizontal slash. The 4th one ducks. Slash. Miss. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Spin. Evade. He was outstanding in his field. Thrust. Nothing. What do you call a titan who can't stop fighting? Prometheus froze mid-swing. What? I don't know, Zephyrus admitted. I haven't figured out the punchline yet. Give me a few rounds. End of chapter 1.
This fool wants a thing to hold. Fingers gripping smoke, but it's already sold. To sit with nothing, to polish the gold. Seek a clutching air, dreaming solid stone. The veil's already spread, it hums on its own. It hums on its own, child, it hums on its own. You search for the throne, but you're flesh and bone. The veil's already spread, it hums on its own. Shame in the stumble, pride in the fall. Periphery laughs, it don't trip at all. 1,000 hands reach, none grip the flame. You lost the game, child, you became. Bass snaps, hi-hats, tease the fog breeze slow. Fools still seek what the wise already know. The hum don't need no tuning, no throne. The veil's been spread, it hums on its own. The veil's already spread, it hums on its own. It hums on its own, child, it hums on its own. You're seeking his noise, it's a whispering tone. The veil's already spread, it hums on its own.
Chapter 2. The Setup. The Arena Between Strikes. The wound on Zephyrus's cheek had already closed, not healed, dispersed. The ichor had evaporated into the air. The cut had become a whisper of displaced molecules, and now there was only smooth skin where the eagle's wound had drawn divine blood. That's annoying, Prometheus observed. Zephyrus didn't sound sorry. Wind doesn't really hold injuries. They just sort of blow away. Then I'll have to cut faster than you can disperse. That sounds exhausting. For you, I mean. I'll just be standing here. He paused. Well, standing. More like persistently occurring in a general location. Prometheus circled him slowly. The Volander of Aetos Caucasios shifted with his movements, the eagle cloak rustling, the feathered blade catching light that seemed to come from inside it rather than from any external source. You're not what I expected, he admitted. What did you expect? A warrior, a strategist, someone who would meet my strikes with counterstrikes, my principles with counterprinciples. Ah. Zephyrus nodded thoughtfully. You expected someone who takes things seriously. I expected someone who understands what's at stake. Humanity's survival. The extinction of an entire species. The end of everything your 30,000 years of suffering was meant to protect. The wind god's voice was light, but his eyes, for just a moment, weren't. I understand the stakes. Then why are you joking? Why are you fighting? Because I love them. And I joke because Zephyrus stopped, tilted his head. Actually, I don't know why I joke. I never really thought about it. The forgotten god. In the beginning, there were 4 winds. Boreas, the north wind, was cold and mighty. He kidnapped princesses. He froze armies. He was feared and worshipped in equal measure. Notice, the south wind, brought storms and late summer heat. Sailors prayed to him. Farmers cursed him. He was known. Eurus, the east wind, was mysterious and unlucky. He brought autumn and decay. People whispered his name like a warning. And Zephyrus was the west wind. He brought spring. That was it. That was his whole thing. When winter ended and the world needed to wake up, Zephyrus blew gently across the land, and flowers bloomed in his wake. Seeds that had been waiting in frozen soil suddenly remembered they were alive. Birds returned from wherever birds go. The world softened. No one built temples to Zephyrus. Why would they? You don't build a temple to a pleasant afternoon. You don't sacrifice goats to the reason your laundry dried nicely. You don't write epic poems about the winds that made sailing comfortable. Zephyrus watched his brothers receive worship and fear and respect. He watched Boreas freeze the Athenian fleet. He watched Notus destroy harvests with his scorching breath. He watched Eurus carry omens of doom across the Aegean. And he carried pollen, helped flowers reproduce, made spring feel like spring. For eons, this was enough. For eons, Zephyrus was content to be the gentle one, the easy one, the one who never caused problems because he never caused anything at all. But sometimes, late at night, when the world was still and even the wind could rest, he wondered, what would it be like to matter? What would it be like to be remembered? What would it be like to be the kind of god that someone might actually tell stories about? The present, the third strike. Here it comes, Prometheus said. The third principle, the final foundation of my art. Ooh, foundations. I love foundations. Very structural, very solid. Zephyrus did a little bounce on his heels. Unlike me, I'm basically the opposite of structural. I'm more of a vague atmospheric suggestion. Stop talking. Can't, sorry. It's a nervous thing. When I get anxious, I just sort of, words come out. Like a verbal breeze, a gentle gust of syllables. The strike that hits before it is thrown. He hadn't seen the blade move. He hadn't felt the wind of its passage. He hadn't even registered the moment of attack. And yet there was ichor flowing from his shoulder, golden blood streaming down his arm, dripping from his fingers, splashing onto the arena floor, where it immediately began to evaporate. What? He touched the wound, confused. When did you? I didn't. Prometheus hadn't moved. The eagle's wound was still at rest by his side, no sign of having been swung. Or rather, I did. Before I did. The strike that hits before it is thrown. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to work. But causality, time, the basic structure of, I spent 30,000 years learning what causality really is. Prometheus's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. You know what I discovered? It's a suggestion, a habit, a story we tell ourselves to make existence feel orderly, but in the space between one moment and the next, anything is possible. Any effect can precede any cause. Any result can arrive before its origin. He raised the blade, slowly, deliberately, as if showing Zephyrus what was about to happen after it had already happened. The eagle taught me this. Every day I knew the pain was coming. Every day I lived the agony before it arrived. Eventually I realized if suffering can precede its cause, so can everything else. So can victory. So can defeat. So can punchlines, Zephyrus murmured. What? Nothing. The wind god was still holding his shoulder, but his expression had shifted. Something like recognition flickering through the perpetual lightness. Just thinking about timing. The divine section's reassessment. He's toying with him, Ares said, but he sounded less certain now. Prometheus is just taking him apart. Is he? Athena was watching Zephyrus's face, not his wounds. Look at the wind god's eyes. Ares looked. He's smiling. He's been smiling the whole time, even when he's bleeding, even when he's being cut by strikes that violate causality itself. Athena's voice held something it rarely held: uncertainty. Why would someone smile through that? Because he's an idiot? Or because he knows something we don't? In the arena below, Zephyrus straightened. The wound on his shoulder was already dispersing, slower this time, as if even wind could be staggered by an attack that arrived before it departed. "Hey," he called out to Prometheus, "you know what's weird about causality?" "I don't care. It's just..." Zephyrus started pacing, leaving little dust devils in his wake. "You said effect can precede cause, right? The strike hits before it's thrown. The pain arrives before the wound." "I get that." Very impressive. Very Titan who suffered for 30,000 years. Get to the point. The point is, he stopped pacing, turned to face Prometheus fully. If effect can precede cause, then so can punchlines. What does that even... Why did Prometheus cross the road? Prometheus froze. You asked that before, in the first exchange, before any of your strikes landed. Did I? Time is so slippery. Zephyrus's smile widened. Maybe I asked it before. Maybe I'm asking it now. Maybe I asked it 30,000 years ago, while you were chained to that rock, and you're only just now hearing it. That's insane. Is it? You just showed me that causality is a suggestion, that effects can precede causes, that the order of things is flexible. He spread his arms, and the wind in the arena began to shift. So maybe the jokes I've been telling weren't random. Maybe they weren't nervous babbling. Maybe they were setups. Setups for what? I don't know yet. The wind god's voice was still light, but underneath it, far underneath it, something else was stirring. Something that had been waiting a very long time to matter. But I think we're about to find out. Flashback. Zephyrus, the Festival of Flowers. There was one day each year when people remembered Zephyrus. The Anthesteria, the Festival of Flowers, when winter finally released its grip and spring came rushing back into the world. The people of Athens would gather to celebrate, and in their celebrations they would pour a little wine for the west wind. Not much, not with ceremony or reverence. Just a splash of red onto the ground, a murmured, "Thanks for the warm breeze," and then back to the drinking and dancing. Zephyrus treasured those splashes of wine more than Boreas treasured his temples. No one feared him. No one needed to appease him. They were just grateful for something small, something easy, something that made the world a little more pleasant without demanding anything in return. He watched the festivals from above, riding his own winds, invisible to all except the flowers that turned their faces toward him. And he wondered, is this enough? Is being appreciated for something small the same as being loved? Is the gentle touch of gratitude equal to the fierce grip of worship? He never found answers, but he kept bringing spring anyway, because that's what he did. That's what wind does. It blows. The arena, the accumulation begins. Round 4. Prometheus attacked with all three principles combined. The strike that appears from nothing, the blade materialized mid-swing, emerging from the void between moments, and lands dead center without aim. It found Zephyrus without seeking him, cutting toward his heart with the inevitability of gravity, and hits before it is thrown. The wound opened on Zephyrus's chest before the blade arrived, ichor flowing from a cut that hadn't happened yet, pain blossoming from a future that was already past. The combination should have been unblockable, undodgeable, unsurvivable. Zephyrus stumbled backward, golden blood streaming from 3 wounds now: cheek, shoulder, chest. The pleasant expression had finally cracked. Underneath it, something raw, something surprised. That actually really hurt. Good. Prometheus pressed forward, blade singing. Now you understand. Now you see what 30,000 years of agony can create. Not just endurance, transcendence. I have moved beyond the rules that govern normal combat. I strike from nowhere. I hit without aiming. I wound before I act. There is nothing that can counter this. What do you call a titan who can't stop fighting? The question hung in the air, the same question from round 1, still without an answer. I told you, Prometheus growled. I don't care about your jokes. That's okay. You don't have to care. Zephyrus was breathing hard now, or whatever wind did instead of breathing. The wounds weren't dispersing as quickly. Something was changing. The joke doesn't need you to care. It just needs you to hear. Hear what? The setup. The turning point. Think about what you've heard since this fight began, Zephyrus said. He was still bleeding, still staggering, still clearly losing by any measurable standard. And yet his voice carried a strange new weight. I've heard nonsense. Have you? Let me remind you. He began to pace again, but differently now. Not the aimless drifting of before, but a deliberate circuit, a pattern. What did the fish say when it hit the wall? Damn. That was after your first strike. The strike from nothing. A fish hitting a wall, something that shouldn't happen, meeting an obstacle it didn't expect. Prometheus said nothing. 3 monks walk into a bar, the 4th one ducks. That was after your second strike, the strike without aim. 3 monks hitting the bar, 3 failures, but the 4th one succeeds by doing something different, by ducking instead of entering. These are just... Why did the Scarecrow win an award? He was outstanding in his field. After your combined strike, standing out by standing still, winning by not moving, by being exactly where you're supposed to be. The wind in the arena was changing, not stronger, denser, as if the air itself was paying attention. And then there's the one I haven't answered yet. Zephyrus stopped pacing, faced Prometheus directly. Why did Prometheus cross the road? I don't. You do. You just don't want to know, because you're afraid of the answer. I'm not afraid of anything. I spent 30,000 years being afraid. The words landed like stones. Every single day, afraid of the eagle, afraid of the pain, afraid that it would never end, and then afraid that it would end, because at least the pain gave you something to push against, something to prove your love against. That's not. Why did Prometheus cross the road? Stop asking me that. Why did Prometheus cross the road? The eagle's wounds swept through the air, strike from nothing, landing without aim, hitting before thrown. All 3 principles combined into a single devastating attack, and stopped, inches from Zephyrus's throat. Not because Zephyrus had blocked it, not because he had dodged, but because Prometheus had stopped. His hands were shaking. To get to the other side, Zephyrus said quietly. That's the traditional punchline. Obvious, boring. Everyone expects it. I know the joke. Do you? Do you know why it's funny? It's not funny. It's the most basic. It's funny because the answer is literal. Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. We expect something clever, something hidden, some deeper meaning. But the answer is exactly what it seems to be. The chicken crossed the road because it wanted to be on the other side. No mystery, no complexity, just movement, from here to there. Zephyrus reached up, slowly, gently, and touched the blade that still hovered at his throat. Why did Prometheus cross the road? Why did you leave the divine realm and join humanity's side? Why did you accept 30,000 years of torture? Why did you turn your torturer into your armor? Why are you here now, in this arena, fighting for a species that will never fully understand what you sacrificed? His fingers traced the edge of the blade, the feathers that were once an instrument of his agony, now transformed into a weapon of his will. The answer is literal, Prometheus. The most obvious answer. The one you've been fighting against this whole time because you think love has to be complicated, has to be proven, has to be earned through suffering. Then what's the answer? Zephyrus smiled, and this time the smile went all the way through. Because you wanted to be on the other side.